Hello and welcome to the Rotoworld Baseball Show. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined after a few weeks, we had a few weeks away, by my co-host, Scott Pianowski. Scott, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. I just came back from my first pitch Arizona. Great little great fantasy baseball conference. Was really fun to meet up with everybody and chop it up and talk baseball and listen to some great presentations. If you're out there and you have not ever been and you really do like fantasy baseball or baseball in general, it's a cool weekend. Just go to some conferences, hang out with people, go watch some Arizona Fall League games. Next year is going to be the 30th anniversary of the conference, and so I know they're planning some big things, and so I highly recommend trying to get out there if you can.
Yeah, it's been a big regret of mine because so much of my job is football related. It's just hard for me to get away on a weekend during the NFL season. But the people at Baseball HQ run a wonderful event. There's just so many smart people there. And, I just know from times I've gone to Tout Wars or other fantasy conventions, anytime you get to put names and faces together and spend quality time, you're watching actual baseball games at this thing. So it just makes you want to go draft like the next day, right? I mean, we know that being a good fantasy manager in any sport means being engaged on some level, even during the off season. And, we had, I think, a very exciting playoffs. It wasn't maybe the greatest World Series after the first game, but exciting playoffs. Is a really loaded group of free agents coming. There's going to be a lot of player movement, and hopefully we can do some things today that get you started for success in 2025. But next year, maybe the best thing you can do to start yourself off to success is looking to that Baseball HQ weekend, because it's again, anytime you can cheat off the smart people, right? Listen to Nick Pollock, listen to Paul Spohr, listen to Eric Samulski, listen to any of the HQ guys. It's going to give you a leg up.
Yeah, and I did a presentation on the importance of new pitches and how new pitches can change, what we think about a pitcher, and so that will be up. I'm going to turn that into an article that will be up on NBC Sports. You can check that out, and we're going to, I put together a PowerPoint presentation for it, so maybe we'll find a way to turn that into some content for you guys. So
look at you, all PowerPoint and all.
Listen, I was a teacher for 11 years, Scott. I mean, I stood up the whole time. I had my Google slides. I had, I got this down. I know how to do that.
Good stuff.
But Scott kind of segued into what we're going to do for today. Obviously, we are beginning our off-season content here. We are not going to be weekly as we are during the season, but we're going to, check in with you guys as the weeks go on for the off-season. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the top free agents. Right today, we're going to talk about some of the top free agents, where we think they'll go, anything that will impact their fantasy landing. We'll look at some of the recent news, and then we'll check in as the offseason goes on, when we get some big developments and then winter meetings and rumors, and then we'll start doing some drafts and all that kind of stuff. But I did want to hit on some of the kind of big news that has come out of the offseason so far. The offseason is brand new, so we're not getting anything gigantic. Yes, like Garrett Cole opted out of his final year of the Yankees contract, only to basically re-sign the same contract, right? You're going to see a lot of that, where like the idea, the headline seems big, but the real take on it isn't all that huge. And so we're going to try to pinpoint the stuff that is actionable. What I thought was interesting, there have been a lot of rumors in the past about Roki Sasaki, who is the top pitcher in Japan. He's just 22 years old. This is a guy that has, won the Japanese version of the Cy Young numerous times, and he's 22. He has a 2.02 career ERA in 69 starts. He's got an 11.5 strikeout per 9, just a 2 walk per 9. That's a career 0.89 whip. This guy's absolutely lights out. And we finally got some sort of confirmation. Kylie McDaniel of ESPN says that all indications are that as of now, Roki Sasaki will be posted this offseason. That's not a confirmation that it happened, but it is the closest we've gotten to the fact that it will happen or should happen. At just 22 years old, I mean, he's going to get a bigger contract than Yamamoto, isn't he? Like that he is going to be a bigger deal than Yamamoto was last year, and we saw how Yamamoto dominated, the pitching landscape last year.
Breaking news, by the way, Sasaki actually had a birthday over the weekend, so he's now 23. But
God, whoa!
everything.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Probably more the one thing about Sasaki I know that you don't, but look, this just seems like a Dodger move, right? I mean, they signed. I can't think of his name.
Well, Shohei and Yamamoto.
Ohtani. Yeah, they shot the two Japanese players last year. They get Ohtani on that backloaded deal, right, where he's not making any major part of his salary now, and I figure this is just one of those things where it's like there are only a few teams that can probably make sense for Sasaki financially, and he's going to want to go to a team that seems Japanese friendly. The Dodgers is ready to contend and maybe win a World Series. The Dodgers, if he is on a major league roster next year, I think it's like 60-40, 70-30 that he's in the Dodger blue.
Yeah, I think when push comes to shove, I think there's 4 teams that are involved in it. I think it's the Dodgers, it's the Mets, it's the Yankees, it's the Red Sox. Those are 4 teams that have the money, have the need for starting pitching, and have had previous connection to, Japanese players and stars who might kind of like soften the landing for a guy like Sasaki when he comes over. I agree. The leader in the clubhouse has to be the Dodgers, just based on their track record and the fact that we do think that they are going to, try to sign another starting pitcher. And so Sasaki does make some sense. I will just say hat tip to Lance Brozdowski, who you can follow on Twitter. It's at Lance Broz, Broz. He dropped a full video with all of the 2024 shape and velocity data from Sasaki. And he just put that out on Halloween. So that's a really good way to, like, if you want to get a video breakdown of what is Sasaki like, what is his arsenal like, what could he be, that's a good place to start. So that would be my recommendation to you, is to go check that out.
Could you see Seattle as a sleeper maybe? I mean, obviously they broke through with Ichiro 25 years ago. Iwakuma was a good pitcher for them. Kaz Sasaki at one point was their closer. Decent sized Asian population in Seattle. I don't know if the checkbook would make sense for them, but whenever a Japanese player comes over, I always think Seattle might be a player.
Well, they don't have a need right now, but I think like if they traded, Kirby for, or maybe it's not Kirby, maybe it's Castillo, maybe it's Wu, who knows? But if they traded a pitcher for an impact bat and then had an opening in their rotation, then all of a sudden they become contenders. I think as of now they're locked in their starting rotation, so I couldn't see it, but there are certainly avenues. There's been enough rumors connecting the Mariners to trading a starting pitcher in the past that it's potentially going to happen.
Right. I almost think that a starting pitcher trade is a mandate for them anyway, because it's the overwhelming strength of the team, and this would just make that easier to do. And the thing is, whenever you go to the market with somebody who could win a Cy Young award, and the Mariners probably have 3 guys I would put in that category right now, you're going to have everybody interested, right? I mean, everybody needs pitching. I mean, one of the takeaways for me during the World Series is that, I think Brandon McCarthy was making this point, there's none of those, oh my God, he's pitching tomorrow. We're screwed. Right. Once Skubal was knocked out of the playoffs, that was it. Right. I mean, Garrett Cole's still good, but the Dodgers obviously won the World Series with a kind of a interesting staff, based on what we thought it was maybe at the beginning of the season, but they didn't have bring the infield in the first inning. We need every run we can get.
There's the potential that like Glasnow or Yamamoto, when they're fully healthy, are those guys, but that's a long way away. I don't know that Cole is that guy anymore, so I get that to your point.
Yeah. Okay.
A couple other offseason things, just some news and note. David Frye, he had UCL surgery, so we were wondering, he can't catch in the postseason. He's still hitting. Well, he had UCL surgery on his elbow. That's about 8 months to return as a hitter and a full year to return as a position player. So David Frye will not catch in 2025. He is not going to play a game behind the plate. And he probably won't come back as a hitter until the early part of the summer, maybe July. So again, in your deeper formats, or if you were using David Frye as a catcher this year, he's just going to miss pretty much all of next season. I thought this one was interesting. We've talked about, in the past, we talked about how the Brewers upset Corbin Burnes so much that they had to trade him because he was not going to re-sign. Well, the Brewers this offseason, just this weekend, decided to decline their $10 million team option on their closer, Devin Williams. Obviously, $10 million for Devin Williams, who's one of the best closers in baseball, is more than a fair salary. But Devin Williams is still arbitration eligible, and his expected arbitration salary arbitration salary is expected to be around $9 million, maybe a little less. So the Brewers declined the $10 million option so that they could hopefully get an arbitration hearing and get him for $9 million or less, which means the Brewers basically declined their $10 million option on Devin Williams to save $1 million.
Classic penny wise, pound foolish, right? I mean,
right.
Remember the Steelers, the Pirates were in this kind of mess where they declined a player bonus that he missed by like 1 or 2 at bats or something like that. And it's like, what are you doing? Right. You're just, it looks terrible. Obviously the last time we saw Williams, his season ended in a very strange way where he blew that save with the Alonso home run in the playoffs and everything. But I thought after his comeback, he was excellent. Milwaukee was a surprise winner of the NL Central last year. I think this roster, especially if they get Yelich back healthy, it's just, they have interesting veterans and young talent all over the place. Now, I know closer is maybe the last thing that you worry about sometimes. And Williams is now 30 years old, but I don't know. Saving $1 million for a baseball club just to tick off somebody who's important to you, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, and to me Devin Williams, not that he was going to re-sign anyway. I think there was that he was probably going to be priced out of what the Brewers were willing to pay, but he's all but gone. He's not coming back to a team that, wanted to save $1 million off of his contract. So the question now for the Brewers is, are you trading him in the offseason or are you trading him at the midway part of the season? Because you can't let a guy like that just hit free agency and you get nothing for it. Also, we saw the Brewers had a decent first half of the season with Trevor McGill closing. So they probably feel like they have options. So I feel like it's inevitable Williams is traded. I don't know with certainty if it's going to happen in the offseason. I'm curious if you think it is going to happen in the offseason, or in general, what teams do you think are teams we should watch who could trade for Devin Williams?
Maybe the Brewers, maybe the Orioles, right? I mean, that's where Burnes ended up last year. We saw them have trouble with their bullpen.
Remember, they're going to get Felix Bautista back though.
That's true. Dodgers, maybe.
Dodgers jump out for sure.
The Royals could use a closer. I don't know if Williams wouldn't be prohibitively priced. I don't think.
What about the Yankees? I mean, they had to go to Luke Weaver at the end of the season, and I know that Luke Weaver was good for them at the end of the season. But if they have the opportunity to trade for Devin Williams, wouldn't you rather have Devin Williams closing games than Luke Weaver and Clay Holmes? I mean, he has some value still, but I think they've moved on from Clay Holmes. I think they hope to move on from Clay Holmes.
Yeah, I think the Yankees actually make a lot of sense. We know they have some big fish to fry, and we'll see where that goes. But this would be a chance to get a lockout closer who isn't making ridiculous money. I can see Milwaukee making a lot of sense.
What about Arizona? I mean, they had Paul Sewald. That didn't work out. They have Justin Martinez, who's 24, I believe, but not proven. And maybe you flip Justin Martinez. Maybe you give the Brewers a cost-controlled young closer, and you try to get Devin Williams for a year. I mean, they're very much in the market there.
Let me give you a sleeper. Let me give you a
Padres. I mean, Suarez was good.
How about the Tigers?
Sure.
Every Jason Foley save was white knuckle. I don't smoke, but if I did, you'd be smoking 10 cigarettes. Sweating 30 pounds off. They got a taste of it last year ahead of schedule. We know famously they were under 500 at the trade deadline. They traded Jack Flaherty. We'll talk about him a little bit later. Justifiably, right? I don't know if they got a great return for Flaherty, but they got what they could get. They get hot. They make the playoffs. And a lot of it was just AJ Hinch being super aggressive with the bullpen, like modern managers are. It helps that they have the horse at the front of the rotation, but they're not. Detroit is not poised to be a Mets, a Yankees, a Dodgers type of payroll. But again, this is a case of, I think a lot of contending teams are going to look at Williams as a value, right? Of a guy who's reasonably priced, who can be a top 5 closer. And that's the type of thing you add. You don't add this when you're a losing team. You look to add this when you're a team that thinks they can win their division, thinks they can go back to the playoffs. And we know, even though we had the Dodgers and Yankees this year in the World Series, which is many years where it's been a baseball tournament and the best teams have not ended up in the World Series. I think Detroit is a sleeper here. I think Scott Harris is a creative general manager. I think he'll at least kick the tires on this.
Yeah. And I throw out one last one is the Rangers. The Rangers have an older roster, right? Simeon and Corey Seager and Adolis Garcia, deGrom, right? I guess they're thinking they might bring Eovaldi back, even though he's a free agent. So getting Devin Williams for a year makes sense with the timeline of what the Rangers are trying to do and to contend. They had Kirby Yates all year as their closer. Jose Leclerc is a free agent and hasn't really ever clicked in that role. We know the Rangers are more than willing to spend money. I don't know if they have the prospect horses to make that deal, but I would throw the Rangers out there.
Since you mentioned the Rangers, I'm going to shamelessly ask you a question, not on script, because it's interesting to me. And I think it'll be interesting to a lot of fantasy managers out there. So Jacob deGrom at peak was probably the best pitcher of his generation. And then he's had a bunch of major injuries. The Rangers signed him to a big contract anyway. He's hardly pitched. He made a comeback late last season. So now the question is where to draft deGrom. In the early NFBC action, maybe 15 drafts, he's actually being drafted as a number 10 starter. And I'm doing some magazine work on the side where there's been talk of maybe the person doing the pitching rankings might have deGrom in the top 5. Now, I'm in a keeper league where we have a really cheap option on deGrom, and my co-manager and I have both said, if we got 3 months of deGrom, we'd be thrilled. We just don't trust him to pitch a full season. What do you see right now as his ADP or into 2025 value?
I did my rankings. I have him as the 6th starter.
Okay. Wow. I'm going to be low on this. I think maybe it's just because I have a key share of him. And if he pops, it would be so great for us that my tendency is to not overrate what I have. And just again, because he's been hurt so much, I'll say this right now. If I could get 15 Jacob deGrom starts next year, I would take it right now.
Well, listen, the reason I have him 6 is a few things. One, he pitched at the end of this year and he looked good. Like I know that he wasn't going 6 or 7 innings, but in terms of just like the velocity, the movement, the shape on his pitches, it was pretty much vintage deGrom. We know that he ended the season healthy. So barring anything in the offseason, he's at least starting the season healthy. He's starting the season healthy, having flashed the quality of pitches that we've seen from him in the past. We have a season on record for deGrom where he threw 90 2/3 innings and finished as one of the top 3 starting pitchers in baseball. So we understand that deGrom, being deGrom, at just 90 innings can be a top 5 starting pitcher. So if you're going to get 90 innings from deGrom, yes, we know that could be a top 5 starter. If you luck into a 2024 Chris Sale season where he throws 140, I mean, he's probably easily the runaway best pitcher in baseball. Yes, that includes Skeens and Skubal. I think 140 innings of deGrom is still better than anything you'll see from anybody else.
I mean, it's been 2019 since he had even 100 innings in a season. But I want to underscore what he did in 2021, that 92 inning season that you referenced. 1.08 ERA, 0.554 WHIP, a 3 ERA plus of 373. Where if you even get to the high hundreds, you're crazy. 200s, you're legendary. 373 is wiffle ball against little kids.
Yes,
it's just obscene.
We've seen Justin Verlander win a Cy Young at an age older than deGrom. So just like that age thing, like we've seen that it doesn't have to be a deal breaker. And for me, it's more just the landscape of starting pitching. Now, will I take deGrom as the 6th starter off the board? Probably not, but that's because in general, my philosophy is not to be one of the first people drafting. So I'm probably not going to take the 6th starter off the board regardless. I'm going to wait and take the 8th, 9th, 10th starter. And if that winds up being deGrom, I might be more than fine getting deGrom and then pairing him, with like an Aaron Nola or a Bailey Ober or a Luis Castillo or somebody who I think has a lower ceiling, but is usually good for 180 innings or whatever. But I think we talked about it on one of the last shows that like, the starting pitching market right now, there is Skeens and Skubal are at the top, and I think most people agree they're at the top, and I think most people agree that Wheeler is 3rd. And then it's just like shoulder shrug, and it's a shoulder shrug down to like starting pitcher 17, 18. Like, you can make a case for so many of those guys to be aces. You can make a case for so many of them to be high-end SP2s. And so I start to get into this range where, like, I look at deGrom, I look at McClanahan coming off Tommy John, I look at Ohtani coming off Tommy John, and I say, healthy, those 3 guys are all top 5 starting pitchers in baseball. If we knew they were going to be healthy. Well, we know that starting pitching is inherently risky. So every starting pitcher, to some extent, is a health risk. Some maybe more so than others, but there's risk involved in all of them. There's going to get a point in your draft where you're saying, I'm just going to take the risky guy with the elite upside rather than the guy that is quote unquote safe. Like this year when you took Logan Webb because he was safe, or you took Zach Gallen because he was safe, and they finished outside of the top 20 starting pitchers. So I at this point, I'm just in on deGrom. I don't think we see pitching a pitcher that good again for a long time.
Yeah, it's so often we mention how fantasy football running backs tie into fantasy baseball starting pitchers, where it's my nature to want to take the quote unquote safe guy, the quote unquote durable guy, but maybe both of those positions, and ironically in fantasy football this year, it's all the receivers who are getting hurt and the running backs have been remarkably healthy. I think that's just a gigantic outlier fluke, but it's been the shape of the season. You hopefully drafted running backs early this year because your return was a lot better.
Yeah.
You mentioned Webb, who I was in on. And look, Webb was a mild disappointment for me. I didn't lose my season because of Logan Webb. I didn't get exactly what I wanted, but when you mentioned Zach Wheeler, you mentioned Luis Castillo, and again, maybe this is a flaw of mine. Maybe I need to reconsider this. My mind thinks, Zach Wheeler's a horse. He's more likely to stay healthy. Luis Castillo, every year he's throwing,
which is funny because you remember the narrative on Zach Wheeler 3 or 4 years ago. He's got arm problems. He's always hurt. That was why the Mets let him go.
Right.
And now all of a sudden Wheeler's a horse. And the same thing with Pablo Lopez. Pablo Lopez was with Marlins. He always has arm problems. He can't stay healthy. Since being traded from the Marlins, he's been a horse. And that's not to say deGrom is going to turn into a horse. We've seen a consistent issue with his arms, his elbows, etc. It's just to say that all that stuff is a little fluky, and guys who were injured aren't always a lock to be injured, and guys who are healthy aren't always a lock to be healthy. Jason Collette had a really great stat at First Pitch Arizona, where he mentioned that Corbin Burnes is the only pitcher so far to have thrown, and I'm going to get this wrong. I think it's like 3,000 pitches in a season, 3 years in a row. Whatever the barometer was, it was basically like Corbin Burnes is the only guy to hit that number for 3 years in a row, because people either don't get to that number or they get hurt. So isn't also there a flip side where you're like, well, that means Corbin Burnes is going to get hurt, because no pitcher has ever done it 3 years in a row. He did it. What are the chances he's going to keep doing it? That would be continuing to be an anomaly. So it just depends on how you choose to look at it. You could choose to look at it as Corbin Burnes is inherently safe, or you could look at it as Corbin Burnes is due for an injury.
So I just wonder if maybe it's just a case of stop trying to find safe guys and just bet on the talent, bet on the talent, and then just hope it's the season. You dodge the raindrops, you dodge the landmines, and obviously you're going to have to draft. And again, much like fantasy football, where you're drafting a bunch of different running backs. Obviously, any fantasy manager in baseball is going to have a lot of those lottery tickets, guys who are one pitch away, one change away from breaking through, and you're going to hope you don't have to hit on every one of those guys. Just a few of them can make your season if you land on the right players. Yeah, Scuba was pretty obvious last year, but there's going to you're all halfway through your draft. All you care about, all the downside risk goes out the window. You don't even care about it anymore. Just tell me about the upside. But maybe that's the starting point for starting pitchers. It's just tell me about the upside, and I'll just accept that everybody has a fair amount of downside, and so much of it is unknowable too.
Yeah, yes, I agree. And I think you're leaning into the talent here. A couple quick things before we move on to our top 10 free agents. I just wanted to update 2 qualifying offers that got put out. So just in case you don't know, the MLB has what's called qualifying offers, where you can offer a player a contract that is basically the league median contract, which this year is $21.5 million. And the player can accept. It's kind of like almost like a franchise tag in football would be kind of like the closest thing that I can think of, except the player in baseball can choose to accept it or not. And so if the player accepts the deal, they obviously take that 1 year deal at $21.5 million this year. If they reject the deal, they become a free agent and the team gets a competitive balanced draft pick in exchange for that. So teams take this gamble of, I'm going to extend this person a qualifying offer because if they don't take it, if they take it, I get them back. If they don't take it, then I get a draft pick. So you get guys like who we're going to talk about, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, all these guys got qualifying offers, right? Because obviously the Yankees would love to have Soto back at $21 million. It's not going to happen. So the Yankees will get a draft pick and Soto will hit free agency. However, there were two that I thought were interesting. The Braves extended a qualifying offer to Max Fried. Now, Max Fried, fully healthy, would not accept a $21 million 1 year contract. However, Max Fried has battled some injuries. And I'm curious if you think there is a chance that Max Fried stays with the Braves for 1 year on that $21 million contract and tries to kind of like prove his health or whatever? Or do you think that given the potential for him to get hurt or his injury history in the past, he's rather going to try to get a multi-year deal in case those injuries pop up and he is locked into a deal for a few years?
I think he'd probably love the second option, but we saw a paradigm shift last year. I mean, think of what happened with Blake Snell, right? I mean, we had to eventually settle for a short deal that he was eventually able to opt out of. But I think what's probably going to happen is Fried is going to find out nobody wants to make a long-term commitment. So he's going to go back and play and bet on himself and, get a decent deal for that. But it's just going to be 1 year with no security. You can always buy a lot of insurance, but it sounds like a prove-it contract for him, a pillow contract.
Maybe. Yeah. The Braves have said they can't get into a bidding war for Fried just because of their, where their salary cap is at, where their budget's at right now. So they want him back. But if he does test free agency and try to kind of get a big contract, he might leave Atlanta. So, that's going to be a personal preference for him as well. And then I'm curious, Red Sox Twitter is melting down that the Red Sox extended a qualifying offer to Nick Pivetta because 1 year, $21 million seems to be a lot for Pivetta. Our very own Matthew Pouliot here did predict that Pivetta would get 2 years, $36 million on the open market. So he had Pivetta as an $18 million a year pitcher. The Red Sox would bring him back at 21. Obviously, if he rejects it and tries to get a multi-year deal, the Red Sox get a draft pick for Pivetta, which is pretty good. My question is, do you think he accepts it, first of all? And if he does accept it, is Nick Pivetta at $21 million a year a huge bummer for the Boston Red Sox?
I mean, he's slightly over league average. He's been fairly durable. ERA plus, usually just over the 100 mark. Is 4 of his last 5 seasons. It's hard to, one of the seasons he only threw a couple of games, but Nick Pivetta is just good enough to be in your rotation in the middle somewhere. He's never going to be a front man. I don't hate this deal. I don't know. You need to fill out your rotation, right? I mean, there's so few aces. He's somebody who you could squint and see him as maybe the number 3 starter on a playoff team. I'm fine with Nick. That Nick Pivetta deal doesn't bother me at all. I know, again, they're protecting themselves. They need to have that draft pick in their back pocket if he ends up going somewhere else. I have a feeling he'll be on the Red Sox next year, and I'll be totally okay with that.
Yeah, I people talk about innings eaters. Like, you just need people that are going to throw innings too. And Pivetta has, despite his injuries when he was younger, he has shown himself to be relatively durable of late. He missed a little bit of time this year, but not a huge chunk. And 4.14 ERA with a 3.59 SIERA, 29% strikeout rate, just a 6% walk rate. That's a career best walk rate. Like, there's a belief that Nick Pivetta is a 3.8, 3.9 ERA pitcher with a solid strikeout rate who's going to give you a decent amount of innings. And $21 million might seem like a lot for that, but I think it's a minor overpay. It's not anything crazy. I assume he accepts it and comes back to the Red Sox because I think he's rolling the dice, to get a longer deal or he's 32 years old. Maybe teams are going to give him a 3-year deal. Like, I don't know if it's going to be that much crazier. than that.
Do you think he's good enough to be somebody you could rely on like a 12-team mixed league, or do you need to shoot a little bit better?
I think in a 12-team mixed league, he's a guy that he's gonna go on hot stretches, and he's gonna be on your roster for those hot stretches. And maybe when he's running well, he's not in every start. Maybe he's like what Paul Sporer calls a team streamer, where you keep him on your roster depending on the size of your benches, and you don't play him all the time, but you don't really want to throw him to the wire. But I don't think he's a locked-in starter in a 12-team league. I think either he's
a start by starts or week by week decision for you, and you'll steer him away. And I realize this can be, it's easy for this to go off the rails where you bench somebody against the hard matchup, you play him against the weaker matchup, and then invariably sometimes they'll throw a shutout, or nobody throws shutouts, but you know what I mean, a 1-run game against the Yankees. Yeah. And then they'll get lit up by the worst offense in the American League. That just happens sometimes. But if nothing else, I think he'd be like kind of a preferred, more likely in your lineup than out. But let's just see what the schedule looks like type of guy.
Yes, I agree with you on that. We're going to get to the top free agents and where we think they're going to go. But before we do that, it is a showdown in the Lone Star State this Sunday night. Watch Jared Goff and the Lions take on CJ Stroud and possibly Nico Collins. We'll see if he comes back. And the Texans, as both teams fight for playoff position down the backstretch of the season. Coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time only on NBC and Peacock.
Thrilled for that one. As a Detroit guy, man, there's a neighbor of mine who I think I've spoken to maybe an hour since he's lived next door to me over several years. We talked for about 20 minutes yesterday about Zadarius Smith. We know that the Lions lost Aiden Hutchinson, a great pass rusher and just a high motor guy. And so that was a pressing need for them to get Smith as 5 sacks for the Browns. He's basically 85% of Hutchinson, something like that. I'm excited. I think Detroit has an excellent chance to get to the Super Bowl.
They look like the best team in the NFC right now, and potentially the best team in all of football. So I would agree with you on that. This is going to be a must watch game
for sure.
So Matthew Pouliot over at NBC Sports puts out his top 111 free agents every single year, just so he gives you a paragraph on each guy, their age, predictions on salary, not predictions on what team they'll go to, but predictions on salary. A lot of really good, useful stats. That's up on NBC Sports, so make sure you check that out. We've all been kind of tweeting it out too. So Scott and I are going to go through some of the top guys on his list, and then we'll pick and choose some later. And we are going to give some predictions on where we think they're going to go. Maybe some hope, maybe an actual prediction. Who knows? Obviously not a shocker who the top guy is. It's Juan Soto. Matthew has him predicted for a 12-year contract for $600 million, which somehow almost feels a little light, but it's probably around what we're going to get. I'm curious where you think Soto ends up.
I think he probably ends up back for the Yankees, but I want him to go to the Mets because it would drive the Yankee fans crazy. And the Mets have the capability of being a really dangerous team. That we saw a little bit of it last year, but I think they need one more piece in the middle of the lineup. Maybe they're not going to bring Alonso back. So he's a New York player one way or the other. I know he said he'll talk to every team, but come on. He's not going to the Pirates. He's not going to the Marlins.
Well, to be fair to him, he might not go to those teams because those owners aren't actually going to offer him anything. Like the Pirates should be willing to offer $500 million to Juan Soto because we know their owner has that money. They're not going to do it. But there's no reason that when Juan Soto said that he's open to every team, there's no reason that every team shouldn't have contacted him and at least made some pitch. There's no good reason other than, hey, I'm cheap and I don't want to spend money.
Right. I sort of pocket the league subsidy, just make money and say that we're trying to contend, trying to win 85 games. Yeah, it's embarrassing. And it's such a great time for the Pirates because they have so much, obviously Skeens is at the front of it, but O'Neal Cruz did some interesting things last year. This is a very winnable division. It sounds like Milwaukee, even after winning the division, they're going to make some changes. We talked about Devin Williams earlier. So it's just a shame that the Pirates don't have an aggressive invest in your product ownership because this is the time to do it.
Yeah. I share your hope, but I think Juan Soto actually does end up with the Mets. He and his agent have basically said he wants the money and he wants to play for a World Series contender. Well, the Mets were one series away from the World Series, and Steve Cohen is going to outbid everybody. So he's going to get more money from the Mets than he will from any other team. And the Mets have proven they are contenders. So I think that's going to scratch all the itches, and I think he's going to wind up with the Mets. And listen, I have some Yankee fan friends that are more than fine with that. And I think the reason they're more than fine with that is that Juan Soto was not, even though, like, yes, he was nominated for a Gold Glove, whatever. Juan Soto was not a particularly great defensive right fielder this year. Aaron Judge was not a good defensive center fielder for the Yankees. Aaron Judge should not be in center field. If you're bringing back Juan Soto, you are committing to Aaron Judge in center field for even longer. There's an argument to be made the Yankees would be better off letting Juan Soto go, moving Aaron Judge to right field, spending the money from Juan Soto on multiple good offensive players and maybe a closer, and really kind of like making the team deeper as opposed to just focusing on Soto.
Right. I mean, we always said last year, right, top heavy, Yankees top heavy. I know they still got to the World Series, but they would like a lineup that stretches back in the good old days where it was a 1-9 lineup. It never was last year, but so I can see that they have to figure out defense. I don't think they want Judge in center field long-term. Last year, they just had no other options. They had to play Judge there. They had to play Soto there. So it's interesting to see if they can get the moving parts there, but still, Steve Cohen would love nothing more than to make a splash. Now, there's a guy with the bottomless pockets who doesn't care. He's not trying to make a profit. He just wants to, and granted, if you win the World Series, you'll make a profit anyway, but he just wants to win the World Series, and he would love to take the back page away from the Yankees, and getting Soto would do that.
Agreed. The number 2 free agent on Matthew's list is Corbin Burnes. I'm curious where you think Corbin Burnes ends up.
I think the Orioles need him, man. I mean, last year, it was frustrating to see them not do anything at the deadline. I realize the problem is that they have so many intriguing young players and young prospects, and then people just start thinking they offer ridiculous things. Okay, here's our number 3 starter. We'll take Jackson Holiday off your hands. It's just never going to happen. So I don't Burnes. The thing with Burnes is that he's gone from, and we talked about the playoffs not having those locked in aces and stuff. I think Corbin Burnes is really good, but not maybe the yearly Cy Young candidate that used to be. You talked about that Jason Collette stat earlier. Jason Collette's just a wonderful fantasy writer, by the way. If you ever have a Tampa Bay question, he should be your first call. But I think the Orioles are going to aggressively try to keep him, but I'm not sure I'm going to draft him next year for fantasy.
Yeah, I have him as my number 4 starter right now. I also think that the Orioles are going to keep him. I know the Dodgers are rumored because he had that eyes emoji on Twitter to their World Series celebration. But you and I talked about, like, we think the Dodgers are going to be in on Sasaki, and so probably out on Burnes. So I would agree that he's going to go to the Orioles. Max Fried was the 3rd free agent, and Willy Adames is the 4th free agent. Huge year for Willy Adames. He was extended a qualifying offer. I think there's no way he accepts that off of the year that he just had. I'm curious where you think Willy Adames goes.
I want to pretend the Red Sox should be on Adames. Maybe it's because I just remember them, make splashes with Trevor Story and other infielders in the past. But he's not going to go back to the Brewers. I don't know. Could Houston make sense? I know they have Pena, but they could always move Adames to a different position. Maybe they're going to lose Bregman. They make Adames the 3rd baseman. I'm hoping Red Sox is my hope.
I think it's the Dodgers. He was connected to the Dodgers in trade rumors throughout the season, so I think it makes the most sense. They've been playing, Tommy Edman and Gavin Lux at shortstop. I think it's going to be the Dodgers for Willy Adames, and that lineup is going to get
I can see
even
that.
deeper.
And they don't want to play that bet at shortstop card again. I mean, that
No.
was just, that was a donut in the back of the car. That was not meant to go the mileage that did.
Yeah, no, they can't do that. Number 6 for Matthew is Alex Bregman. People seem to think it's a lock. He's going to come back to Houston. I'm curious if you do as well. 31 years old, certainly seems to be on the back half of his career. Do you think that the Astros just pony up and keep him?
I do. I think they need to, right? Another lineup that we used to see go 1 through 9 that now is it's centered around 4 guys. And Bregman is not quite this. He's still a good player, but he's not quite the, MVP candidate player he used to be. I think they need to keep him. And I think Bregman's happy to stay there. I'd be surprised if there's a lot of teams that are contenders that don't need 3rd baseman too. So maybe he won't have the market that he would like. But I think Houston and Bregman will figure something out.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. The next one is Blake Snell. Coming off a career year after you talked about the slow start and the issues with Boris. I'm curious where you think we get Blake Snell next year.
Do the Phillies have the budget for it? They're not afraid to go big.
Maybe. They probably have they should have the budget. They have the rotation spot. They need one. Is that your prediction?
You think the Royals would maybe open up the wall for Snell?
I don't know.
I didn't know how to read the Snell market last year. I mean, he's a really unusual guy, right? I mean, he's somebody who's had a lot of missed seasons, and then when he's healthy, he's won 2 Cy Young awards, right? He finally got a complete game last year when he threw a no-hitter. I feel like I'm always out of step with where Blake Snell is going, where Blake Snell is headed, the money he's going to command. And he's just one of those guys that every team, we talked about just the riskiness of what you buy into when you draft a starting pitcher early, and they have come with so many caveats and risks. And I feel like Snell, you could sign him, you get 45 innings, you get 170 innings, you could get a Cy Young award. I just think there's an extremely wide range of outcomes, and he's represented by the guy who's going to want to get every absolute penny that he can get, and isn't afraid to wait out the market. We saw how late Snell signed last year. I think he's one of the most difficult guys to project.
Next up is somebody we've been talking about, throughout the whole offseason, but it's number 8 starting free agent is Pete Alonso. Seems like the Mets want him back. 30 years old, coming off a fine but not great season. We've seen the average not kind of come back to what it was in the past. The power is certainly there. Do you think that the Mets are going to keep him? Do you think that Alonso can get back to like being a 260-ish hitter or not?
There's a player I would not want to invest in his 30s, right? I mean, his WAR went down to 2.6 last year by Fangraphs, and part of that is the position adjustment, but he's never been a dominant OBP player. You accept the batting average for what it is. OPS plus the last 2 years was just 123. I think Pete Alonso is a dangerous player to make a long. They can get him for 3 or 4 years, with club options built in or mutual options. That's fine. I would not give him a long-term contract.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that strikes me as like he'll be a DH in 2 years.
Yes,
and I think you have to plan for that. Now he could be a good DH. Like you might get 5 more years of solid, at least power production out of Alonso. But I think you're looking at probably a guy who's going to settle into being a 230, pretty consistently like 230 hitter as he ages with solid power, who doesn't run and will be basically a full-time DH in a couple of years. So that's a tough pill to swallow if you're giving a huge contract. Matthew has 5 years, $125 million as his projection. 5 years, $125 million for Pete Alonso. Would you pay that?
I wouldn't. I think somebody will. And we've also, another thing that complicates his landing spots, right? A lot of teams don't need first baseman, and a lot of teams don't want a designated DH, right? They don't want a locked-in player who holds that position. They'd like to make it a floating holiday for guys and rotate the DH. So I think that's a little bit of a turnoff too, but it only takes one team to need or identify a player and decide they want to do it. I think Matthew's contract speculation is reasonable. I just think that's going to turn a lot of teams off.
Yeah. All right. Last one in the top 10, because the 10th free agent Matthew has is Cody Bellinger, who took a player option, who actually accepted his player option with the Cubs. So he's going to be back with the Cubs next year. So the number 9th free agent on Matthew's list is Anthony Santander. Coming off a 44 homer season, the Orioles did extend him a qualifying offer, but it would be a shock if he took that coming off this year. Just 30 years old. Where do you see Anthony Santander going? Matthew's projection for him is 5 years, $110 million. Does that seem fair? I mean, he has always been a pretty good homer hitter, at least.
No, I think it's reasonable. Toronto maybe strikes me as a possible fit.
Would you see him? Would you like to see him in Boston?
Of course I would. I don't think they're going to be priced out of him. I'm also really curious to see how they handle the Tyler O'Neill contract. We know the Red Sox think they can just buy low on guys, get in at the right time, and then you make the decision later, or you just scoop up the compensation picks. But I think Boston will be priced out on Santander, but I wouldn't mind if he went back to Baltimore too. I mean, there's a team that their offense, if they want to run most of it back, they would like to trade something for pitching, but there's no reason why they can't be a top 5 offense next year.
And he could feel, I mean, he's been there his whole career. He could feel some sense of, loyalty to them. If the Yankees strike out on Soto, this feels like a pivot option to them.
I like that. Yeah, for sure.
Also, remember that Santander has had experience playing first base before. Even though he has primarily played the outfield and DH, he has played first before. The Yankees could see him as a first baseman and still move Judge to right field. They need to replace Rizzo, obviously. So I think there's going to be a lot of people calling for Santander if he decides not to stay with the Orioles.
Also, just the flexibility your lineup gets when you add a power hitting switch hitter. There just aren't many guys like that. So it just gives you so many. We've seen now the way teams are more sabermetrically proactive with their lineups. And when you have a guy like that who can slot a lot of different places, because more than ever now, you're trying to set up your lineup. It used to be you set up your lineup towards the opposing starting pitcher. Now it's really against the opposing bullpen. And just having that type of player who hits from both sides gives you an extraordinary weapon where you can really put anybody in slots you want. You don't have to worry about handedness so much.
Yeah. We're going to end this by talking about some of the pitchers the players that didn't make the top 10 for Matthew that Scott and I are interested to see where they go on your radar. But before we do that, just 4 drivers remain, and they head to the desert to determine who will be crowned champion. It's the NASCAR Championship in Phoenix, with coverage starting Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. That's this Sunday, 3 p.m. on NBC and Peacock. So Scott, we're gonna just talk about some of the guys who didn't make Matthew's top 10, who did make his top 111 free agents, and just see why are they interesting to us, and where do we think they might end up. I want you take a crack at this first. Who should we keep an eye on?
I'm really curious to see what the market does with Jurickson Profar. What do you do with a guy who has famously, he was the number 1 prospect in baseball. He was hurt a lot, bounced around the league, never seemed to have a dedicated position, which I think didn't help his development as a player. And then finally, everything comes together last year with the Padres, makes the All-Star team, has a 3.7 WAR season, 280, 380, 459, 134 OPS plus. So what do you do when a guy has a career year at 31, right? I mean, do you believe in it? Do you buy into it? He's going to want to get paid. I would like to see him actually stick with the Padres, but and also just maybe you don't view him as the Swiss Army knife he used to be, but teams are always trying to come up with creative fits for their lineup. So maybe they think, okay, can we talk ourselves into him back in the infield? Could he play either of the corner outfield spots? He's not a center fielder, but I'm just happy to see Profar finally figure it out, right? I mean, just a guy who just everything went wrong for him, timing, injuries. He never seemed to find an organization that left him alone for a while. So he's now a plus offensive player. I think a lot of teams will be in on him, but probably a corner outfielder. And I'm just curious how the market's going to react to his surprising, really shocking career year at age 31.
Yeah. You have a Tiger on here as well, or a former Tiger on here as well.
Yeah, Jack Flaherty, man. Another guy, just nice to have him back in our lives, right? I mean, he was hurt. His ERA was well over 4 for several years. He has this great comeback season with Detroit, and then was disappointing with the Dodgers. 3.58 ERA, 1.28 WHIP, which was not in line with his Detroit stats. And then he was kind of hit or miss in the playoffs. But yeah, I wonder if the Cardinals would be interested in maybe rekindling with Flaherty. I mean, obviously, he was a Cy Young candidate 5 or 6 years ago there. They have some history. He knows the restaurants. He knows the real estate market. Maybe the Reds want to make a splash, want to do something. I don't think he's going to stay with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Who's your last one?
Teoscar Hernandez, who the Dodgers, again, the lineup, did it go 1 through 9 deep? Maybe not, but Hernandez plays a full season, career high in WAR, career high in home runs, 137 OPS plus. I think the Dodgers would like to bring him back, but they're not going to prioritize it. You don't get a lot of defensive value with Hernandez. It's just nice to see him not stuck with Seattle, right? That his worst season comes part of Petco, whatever was Petco Field, not Petco Field, Safeco. And now that I don't know what they're calling it now, but and I think that park is totally screwed up. Julio Rodriguez, by the way, I got to figure out what's going on with J-Rod. I have no idea where to rank him next year. Could Teoscar, I know you said the Yankees want to prioritize defense, but if the Soto thing doesn't work out, could Teoscar Hernandez be a corner outfielder for the Yankees next year?
Yeah. I mean, for him, like he has experience in left field, which could be interesting to, move Judge to right and get a center fielder. So yeah, I like that idea. My three guys, I have Christian Walker, 34 years old, first base only. So that's going to limit his market, but has been a consistent source of power, is a much better defensive first baseman than Pete Alonso. So I think there you might have a little more value with him staying at first base for a while. I'd be curious to see where he goes. He's a guy who might get like a 2-year deal for some team that could, some smaller budget team who could sneak in there. Yusei Kikuchi, coming off a tremendous second half of the season with the Astros, where they changed his pitch mix and had him kind of focus primarily on the fastball and the slider. Does another team see that and say, hey, we could get like pretty good production from you if we just switch the way you attack hitters? Does he go back to the Astros because of that? Does he go to the Red Sox, who need a left-handed starter? Does he go to the Diamondbacks? Does he go to the Cardinals or the Braves? Who knows? And then the last is Shane Bieber. Shane Bieber had a tremendous start to this year and then obviously got hurt and is a free agent. Where does he go? Does he go back to the Guardians and, do they get a nice little hometown discount because he's coming off an injury? Do the Braves make him their fifth starter and take the Chris Sale, Reynaldo Lopez approach of like, I'm going to take a pitcher who's always had injury issues and I'm going to, try to resurrect the career a little bit? Do the Dodgers go get him because they don't care if he only throws 120 or 130 innings on their team? So Bieber for me is my last guy.
Oh my God. He was so good. He was so good before he got hurt. 12 innings, 1 walk, 20 strikeouts. I just picture him pitching in Seattle and just dotting the I with that slider all day. And I was talking to my co-manager, we had Bieber, and like, he's going to be a Cy Young contender. And I don't think he ever pitched again after that game.
Yeah, he looked great. And then I just want to highlight for people some potential closers on the move, guys that Matthew had on his list, just see where they end up. We've got Tanner Scott, Jeff Hoffman, Carlos Estevez, Kenley Jansen, Aroldis Chapman, Jose Leclerc, Clay Holmes, Paul Sewald. Where do they go? Do they go to closing situations? Do they go to setup situations? Those are some names just to keep in mind as we continue to watch our free agency, because they are guys whose fantasy value could change drastically depending on where they end up.
And just props to Matthew for just an exhaustive resource on what not just what's going on with the free agent market, but it's a really good check-in on where these players are at, the seasons they're coming off on, what their market value looks like. It's, I think, the first thing you should read. The second thing would be when Eric gets his PowerPoint piece and turns it into an article. That's the second thing you should read. But go read Matthew's piece right now. It's just an excellent check-in on where the market is at right now.
Yes, and that's up on NBC Sports, and mine will be as well. And Scott and I will be back to continue talking baseball with you as the off season goes on. So keep it locked here at the Rotoworld Baseball Show. You can follow me on Twitter at SamskyNYC and Scott at Scott_Pianowski. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Rotoworld Baseball Show.